Are you seeking fulfillment for your life? Do you want freedom from fear? That's why we're here. Welcome to Jesus 101, introducing you to the real Jesus. And now, here's your host, Elizabeth Talbot.
Welcome to Jesus 101, our series on Revelation, the fifth gospel. We continue talking about the different pictures of Jesus in the book of Revelation and how the great controversy and the big conflict between good and evil is resolved. As a matter of fact, I have changed the color that is on the cross because we are told in the chapter we're going to study today that they overcame through the blood of the Lamb. They overcame. The only reason why we will be victorious and redeemed was because of the blood of the Lamb. I love the book of Revelation because it gives you the big picture. And I had a very funny situation that happened to me once, and it happened to me in a cruise ship. I was new to this, and actually until today, I don't like cruises very much because I don't do very good in the water when in those big ships that move so much. So it was my first one. And so they told me, don't worry about it. And we didn't have a lot of money, so we didn't have one of those cabins that has windows or whatever. We were in the middle, I don't even remember what floor. So at 3 o'clock in the morning, this thing starts rocking. I mean, it's going here and there, and I'm like, I'm not going to be able to make it here. And so I get out of the room, and I look outside, and there's stars and no storm, and it's great. Everything is great. And still the ship is going crazy. And so I'm one of those type A people that needs explanations so I can understand. So I don't find anybody at 3 o'clock in the morning to ask them a question about why is this happening? Why is this rocking? So I find this one man who is washing the windows of the little different shops that are inside the ship. And we can't understand each other very well because the engines are very, very, very loud. And on top of that, I had a stronger accent than the one I have now. And he had a very strong accent from a different country. So I am yelling because I'm getting very nervous because I'm getting sick. And I said to him, "Why is this ship moving?" And he goes, "Because we are in the ocean." And I go, "But this is a big ship." And he yells, "But the ocean is bigger." And I'm never, ever going to forget that because he was trying to put it in perspective for me. And it still wasn't making any sense to me how this big ship was rocking. And he was trying to explain to me that the ocean was so much bigger that if I could just imagine for a moment that we were in a bigger picture than the one we were in, then somehow that would give me an explanation. But it didn't give me great comfort. But I learned one thing, that it is so important sometimes to try to see the bigger picture. And maybe that will bring you some comfort to realize that there's another reality that is greater. And one of those big realities, and I always use that story for the book of Revelation, because in some ways, what the book of Revelation does is saying, yes, you are in a ship that is rocking, is moving, and it might not be too comfortable right now. But he's yelling, "But the ocean is bigger." Actually, let me tell you what happened from beginning to end. As a matter of fact, Jesus wins. So you need to know that the ocean is bigger. Well, today we are seeing that particular chapter. A chapter in Revelation that gives us the picture of Jesus and two very interesting pictures of Jesus. We have Jesus as a child, and we have Michael, the one who will fight the dragon. And before, I used to work for Voice of Prophecy, and Fred Kinsey, whom I appreciate very much, we used to do a sermon together on this pictures of Jesus in Revelation. And he always used to refer people to this verse. And with this, I want to start today. Chapter 12 of Revelation says that verse 7 says, "And there was a war in heaven. And Michael and his angels waging war with the dragon and the angels waged war, and they were not strong enough. And I remember Fred saying, if all you can remember of the book of Revelation, chapter 12, is the dragon was not strong enough, you would get the hope saying, okay, yes, it looks like sometimes evil is winning. It looks like sometimes, but don't forget, the dragon was not strong enough. And he used to repeat this sentence, and it kind of stuck with me. And today we are going to talk about it. But before we start with that, let's start with the first part of chapter 12 that has a child. And this child is born of a woman, and it brings this picture of Revelation, of Genesis to Revelation once again. Remember when we started back in the beginning of the Bible, when humankind sins and God makes a covenant. And the covenant is in Genesis 3:15. And the covenant is told to the serpent, that we don't know who the serpent is all the way to Revelation 12. Today, the serpent will be unmasked because we are going to be told again about the serpent. Chapter 3 of Genesis, verse 15. This is what God says. I will put an enmity between you and the woman, he says to the serpent, and between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise you on the head, and you shall bruise him on the heel. Oh, says God, you and your descendants are never going to get along with the woman and her descendant, because there's going to be this enmity between the two of you. And you know what? You are going to get the heel, but we are going to crush your head. This is one of the most passionate promises, and it's the first covenant that we have, where God says to the devil, I'm going to crush your head. These pictures of Jesus as a child and Jesus as the warrior, as Michael doing war with the dragon, they seem to be such opposite. But the truth is, we have an expert here today who's going to help us to understand why we have Jesus as the child and Jesus as Michael. And so we're going to go to the section Ask the Expert. And this is going to be Michael. And we're going to ask some questions about Michael. So follow me to the expert section where we have Dr. Kendra Haloviak Valentine, who has a lot more answers than I do today. And I am hoping that she will help us with this chapter 12, where Jesus is the child. And then we have Michael doing war in heaven. And then we go back to the descendants of the woman and the dragon that is enraged and all this very rich language. Hello, Kendra.
Hello.
I'm so glad you're here. Do you like my Michael? Isn't that a nice Michael?
It's very nice.
Oh, do you really think so? Tell us the truth. Well, it's good enough for me. This is Michael, and
Brilliant.
the child is left over there. And maybe you can give us some rich things from this chapter 12.
One of the first things we probably should say is that the name Michael is who is like God. And I think that's very important, especially when we meet in the next chapter a beast, and the language is going to come up, who is like the beast.
Oh.
And so there's sort of this contrasting language between the dragon and God, and Michael and the beast. And so you see this contrast.
That is very important, and probably most of the viewers will recognize the L in Michael.
Yes.
You know, many times we have something that has L in it, like Emmanuel,
Right.
God with us. So Michael means the one who is like God.
Who is like God, yes. And so he's the one that's fighting this dragon in this scene here in chapter 12, but it's in the middle of the chapter.
Yeah. That's one of the strange things about this chapter. That starts in a different place.
Right. It starts with a woman and a dragon, and then it goes to Michael and the dragon, and then it comes back to the woman and the dragon again. So it's a very interesting way of constructing this chapter in these three scenes.
Yeah, because it seems like it interrupts this.
Exactly.
And then it starts with Michael.
Right.
Because this woman is about to have a child, and the dragon wants to to devour this child. Can we read it so that those who don't have Bibles with them can if you want to start reading chapter 12.
Sure. Chapter 12, beginning in verse 1, a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. Remember, we talked about the number 12 and how important numbers are in this book. She was pregnant and was crying out in birth pangs, in the agony of giving birth, that very most crucial moment of giving birth. Then another sign appeared in heaven, a great red dragon with 7 heads and 7 horns and 7 diadems on his heads. And his tail swept down a third of the stars of heaven and threw them to the earth. And then the dragon stood before the woman who was about to bear a child so that he might devour her child as soon as it was born.
This is such a scary,
Yes.
I mean, we have a woman that is pregnant, and the child supposedly is Jesus here?
There's definitely that imagery here, yes, sort of an incarnation scene, if you will.
Okay.
And who, from humanly speaking, given the description of that dragon, who would win?
The dragon is so...
It's not even, I mean, this is a newborn. You know,
but this is one of the amazing things about this chapter is that we have this almost defenseless, completely defenseless, a child, and this image of this dragon waiting for her to give birth so that he would eat this child, devour the child.
That's right.
And it's almost like everything is lost. I mean, such a hopeless...
Precisely. We never think of any victor other than the dragon. But here's how the story continues. And she gave birth to a son, a male child, who is to rule all the nations with a rod of iron. But her child was snatched away and taken to God and to his throne. Some commentators suggest that we have in these few verses, we have incarnation, birth of Jesus, life of Jesus, death of Jesus, resurrection, and ascension, all in a few sentences.
Wow.
And that it's all sort of the gospel story.
It's like all 4 gospels in this one verse. So the child is born, obviously the seed of a woman I was talking about from Genesis. In this case, we have incarnation. The child eventually ascends to heaven, and the dragon is left with his desire to devour the child, but couldn't.
And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared by God. And so
Who is the
you
woman?
think that you're going to follow the woman, but instead then you have this section of Michael and the dragon. We're still in the heavens before we get back to her.
Okay. If the woman gives birth to the child, is this like the history of redemption? Is this the church? Is this...
Many people see it that way. Many people see this as sort of Mary, the mother of Jesus, the literal mother of Jesus, but then also the idea of the church.
As a woman.
As a woman.
Which would be, with Revelation, it would be...
Consistent with other places.
Exactly.
That's right.
And plus the original promise being the seed of the woman who would redeem the... And that obviously wasn't Mary. And here we have a woman who goes to the wilderness. Is this a hardship time? Is it a time where she has to hide from this dragon? What is this wilderness time?
Well, wilderness in Scripture is often used as a contrasting ideas. It's a place of hardship and trials and temptation and difficulty, but it's also where God is. So there's a sense in which God is with her even in the wilderness, just like the Shekinah glory traveled with the children of Israel in the wilderness.
Like the tabernacle that went with them?
Right. So that sense of, yes, it's hardship, yes, it's includes trials and temptations, but
do
God
we have
is also
God
there.
with her here? Yes, actually we do. Verse 6.
Is a place prepared.
The woman fled into the wilderness where she had a place prepared by God so that she would be nourished for 1,260 days. So God is with her all this time.
And that's going to become clear again when we see her at the last part of chapter 12.
Okay,
God's
so
still with her,
we
protecting
have
her.
This interruption now.
Right.
Okay, so we have this defenseless, for all of you that perhaps this is the first time you hear this chapter, it's almost like a hopeless chapter at the beginning. It's like this child, defenseless, but God intervenes, he's taken up to heaven, and the church, the history of the church, God is going to take care of the church, but the dragon was not too happy about that. All of a sudden we get this warrior, the one that is like God, Michael, and we are told from a different perspective. Is this from heaven perspective? How come?
Yeah, I think there is something like that going on. I remember reading in Eugene Peterson the idea that if we think of Christmas as only, how did he say it? Something like this, drinking hot chocolate and standing around a piano singing Christmas carols, we really haven't caught the drama of Christmas and how it really is, incarnation is God challenging the devil, challenging the dragon, that there's high drama here, there's great controversy here.
Behind the whole Christmas tree and the gifts,
And
there actually we are in a cosmic conflict.
And that apocalyptic literature is going to be able to capture that in a way that's different from when we get to the nativity scene, the Jesus birth scene in Matthew or in Luke's gospel.
I love that you bring that up because that's why I started with my story of the ocean is bigger.
Yeah, that's right.
This is what he's saying. Look, let me tell you, says God, what happened from the perspective of Michael.
Right.
What happened in heaven or wherever we start this. Let's actually start the next section, which is almost an interruption. It is an interruption of the story of the woman and the child. And we get this Michael person show up on verse 7.
It's sort of another angle at the way in which the birth of Jesus is part of this drama. Now we see it from the perspective of war breaking out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon. The dragon and his angels fought back, but they were defeated. And notice, and there was no longer any place for them in heaven. And then notice how many times the phrase thrown down. The great dragon was thrown down. The ancient serpent, who's called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. There's no question who that is. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him.
Wow.
3 times that idea of down. So that the baby is taken up, the devil is thrown
going down.
Yes.
Okay, let's look at this for a moment because I was saying how much hope and maybe our viewers are needing this hope right now. That sometimes you look around and you see so much evil, and it looks like the devil is prospering in the world. And this one sentence has brought me great comfort that the devil was not strong enough. In this case, the dragon was not strong enough, even though he was pretty strong. He knocked out 1/3 of the stars of the angels in heaven. And here we have, he was not strong enough, but God is able to throw him down and throw him down and throw him down. So that you don't get any doubts that, okay, he's down. But we still have this Michael. What is this war? Why do we get a warrior when we had a child at the beginning of the chapter? And you're saying it's because we're getting the cosmic view of the same situation, but we are told, okay, we want to tell you from the cosmic, from the universal. This is God's view of the situation.
But yes, but I also think it's fascinating that this followed the baby scene.
Okay.
This didn't go before the baby scene.
Okay.
Because it seems to me that the Revelator is wanting us to realize that when Jesus was born, the devil was thrown down. That the very act of incarnation, of God stooping down and becoming one, defeated the dragon. And so the order, I think, is quite powerful and important.
Okay, I think that is a point that we need to discuss for a little bit longer because, in the Gospel of Matthew, I love some things from the Gospels that do a similar thing. Like when Jesus is dying in the Gospel of Matthew, we are told, and many were raised from the dead. In the middle of the narrative of the crucifixion, in the moment that Jesus dies, death is killed. And so he has this victory. Even though he's dying, he has defeated death. And so all these people resurrect that weekend. So his death kills death, right? So it seems like a very similar metaphor saying, okay, when he's born, when the Savior is born, Satan's down.
You're reminding me of C.S. Lewis's The Chronicles of Narnia, the first book, where Aslan is described as, because he was willing to die, that death itself began working backwards. I love that phrase. Death itself started working backwards. And I think that's right.
Yes, and there's another thing from Matthew. I love the Gospels. In the last chapter where Jesus is resurrected, Matthew has this the angel not just rolling away the stone in chapter 28, verse 2, but the angel rolls away the stone and sits on it.
Yeah.
And I just love that, sitting on it, like, any questions, anybody?
Yeah.
He has resurrected and this is done. You know, and what a powerful visualization. We have something like that. So when the Savior is born, the devil is defeated.
And going back to this prop that's reminding us of Michael the warrior, what is very moving to me is that Michael the warrior is victorious, not because he has a bigger sword, not because he's able to be more violent than the dragon, but because he says no to violence. And he wins through self-sacrificing love, through being willing to stoop down and become a baby. And for me, that's turns on its head all of our war imagery.
Yes, and as a matter of fact, it's something that will be repeated here, because it will say in verse 11, that's how we started the program, that he didn't overcome because he took everybody's head off, but because they overcame because of the blood of the Lamb. That's so, and this is such a turn on the world's value.
Yes. That's right.
That's
exactly right.
Yeah, it's exactly the opposite. By self-sacrifice.
What kind of warrior is Michael? A self-sacrificing warrior, one who's willing to show the power of self-sacrificing love instead of love power. And I think that is one of the main ideas of the book of Revelation.
So the followers should have similar value.
Precisely. It's not about for us to pick up our literal swords and follow behind the warrior. Instead, it's that idea of the sword is coming out of Jesus' mouth in chapter 1. It's the testimony. It's the witness to Jesus. And the word that became flesh and dwelt among us.
That's how he overcame.
That's the focus, should be the focus of our message and mission.
I'm so glad you said that, because I'm sure many of our viewers have been hurt by religion when religion goes bad. As a matter of fact, the worst wars in the history of the world are in the name of God, where people say, okay, we have to fight, take the armor, and we're going to be stronger than them in the name of God. We have not just the Crusades, but a lot of people willing to get the sword. They don't realize that the victory of the Lamb is the self-sacrificing. He gives himself up. And that's the way that he overcomes. And then we go back to the dragon. And I like the fact that you said on verse 9, the dragon is exposed. It says the great dragon was thrown down, and the serpent of old, that's why I brought the snake as a prop, who's called the devil and Satan. So we should get the whole thing. I mean, there's
no question who this is. Right.
And then we seem to go back on verse 13 to the woman and the wilderness and all of that.
What's been going on with her? While it's been clear that Michael and the baby are victorious over the dragon, how does this play out? What happens to her?
Yeah, that's the plot. What's happening?
And so then the vision returns to the woman and the dragon, verse 13. When the dragon saw that he had been thrown down to the earth, he pursued the woman who had given birth to the male child. But the woman was given the 2 wings of the great eagle so that she could fly from the serpent into the wilderness to her place where she's nourished for a time, times, and half a time. Then from his mouth the serpent poured water like a river after the woman to sweep her away with a flood. But the earth came to the help of the woman. It opened its mouth and swallowed the river that the dragon had poured from his mouth. Then the dragon was very angry with the woman and went off to make war with the rest of her children, those who keep the commandments of God and hold the testimony of Jesus.
And who are the rest of the children? Because the one child is up to heaven. So
isn't that a powerful description, though?
Yes.
That those who are followers of Jesus are also children of this woman?
That's what I'm asking, because we have the child, and now we have all these children.
This idea of sort of Jesus as brother, Jesus as our older brother, who's gone before and who we're supposed to be following. And when one is following Jesus, one has the same story as Jesus. We too will go into the wilderness. Jesus went into the wilderness. We too will have the protection of God even in the wilderness.
And here we have, in the children are the ones that are loyal to God, and they have the same testimony of Jesus. Well, thank you so much, Kendra.
Thank you.
This has brought so much light here. And as we try to wrap this up, the images were so powerful. We have the child and we have Michael, and actually they're victorious. Both the child and Michael, they have the victory. But I want to go back to the Genesis images simply because now we know who the serpent is. And the seed of the woman, the child, has been victorious. And remember that we have this incredible promise that the head of the serpent would be crushed. Here we have the dragon enraged against the other children. And I love what Kendra just said, the child Jesus, and then all of us brothers, the other children of the woman. But the fact that, God had said, no, we're going to crush the head of the serpent. This is going to be a blow. And the language in this chapter, thrown down, thrown down, thrown down. I mean, the devil has gone down. And I know that is hard to see because we are expecting a time when God will take over and there will be no more evil. We're going to do some of these programs in the future about when is it that evil is no more and there's no more disease and no more death and no more mourning and all these things that some of you are in the middle of right now. I mean, I as I always tell you, is my parents have gone through cancer so many times, each one of them. And you're in the middle of this ship, and the ship is rocking and it's moving. And Revelation says, okay, but the ocean is bigger. Let me tell you the big picture. Michael has won. The dragon has gone down. And we're going, yes, but we still see all this evil around us. And Revelation says, yeah, but look, we're telling you the cosmic view so that you get hope. Don't forget that this book of Revelation was given so that you would not be afraid, no matter what you're going through. So you are given the cosmic view so that you may know that Jesus has won. And that there's a time coming, and we will, like I said, do a whole program on this, when we will be reminded that there will be a recreation. No more evil, no more death, no more cancer, no more tears, not more broken relationships, not more pain of the type you're going through today. This invitation to know that the children of the woman, they overcame because the child overcame by his death. So they overcome not because they have stronger swords, but because they get covered by the blood of the Lamb. I just love this image. You're covered by the blood of the Lamb. And stay with this image, because you already know the end of the story. And during those days that it looks like evil people prosper, that bad is all around us, that you can't even put the TV on because it's like the dragon is winning. Don't forget that one sentence. The dragon was not strong enough. He was not strong enough. Michael has won, and we already know the end of the story.